Hey everyone, it's CJ, Do You Thrive 11 here, and for those who are new, welcome, hello. Um, this is a video in which I talk about coming off of my juice feast. For those who don't know and who are new, I went on a juice feast for 7 days, full 7 days, and then on the eighth day I actually did mostly juicing and ended with a smoothie and stuff, and have since, ventured off. Still have my smoothies and whatnot. Um, but I'm no longer on like a cleanse of sorts. And it's and in this video it's going to be about the ending of my juice feast, but also a lot of lessons that I learned in relation to that, and going into that as well. But I wanted to touch on why, like, it's been a while since I've posted, because I just really needed to slow down and to process things and to write a lot. Um, a lot of this writing will be, shared. I just don't know in what way, but I just needed to take the time to, yeah, sit a little bit after having gone through the like posting, and that was good for me to do. But some like a lot of things hit, and I just need to digest them, and I'm still doing that. So diving into this video. So I ended my juice feast as a result of not being able to afford it in time, energy, and financially, and a lot more in time. Trying to like do a juice feast and document it at the same time, that was just a lot. But I also learned, you know, the fact that I underestimated it, and learned what it really would cost me in time, energy, and financially. And so in that line, I don't really feel defeated by the experience, but in fact, I feel liberated about it just because of all that I've learned. So, like, of course, that isn't to say that I wasn't bummed. I was, and I was either, I don't know, I think I was making one of my last juices or making a smoothie for like on day 8, that I don't know, but I was doing something in relation to this, and I was thinking about failure and the sense of failure, and which I observed I wasn't like as steeped into it as I know I would have been had I been like myself, like 5 to 6 months ago. And I was thinking of how I had thought I had everything planned out, and like even yeah, just yeah, thinking of how I thought everything was gonna go and everything and stuff like that, and then all of the things I clearly hadn't planned out. And it led me to become aware of, and then now investigate my usual thought pattern of how I fall into like really glomming onto like the how, um like everything's gonna go and what everything's gonna look like or be like, and subsequently, what I face like regarding my feelings when life doesn't give an F about my plans and does what it's gonna do. Essentially when things don't go according to plan, or my plan, whatever the case may be, right? And so, and I also thought of, in addition to all that, melting in this pot of rumination, and this might be funny, but I legit, this is serious. I thought of my little brother's girlfriend's lasagna, vegetarian lasagna, and how good it was. And I was thinking of like the possibility of like having it again. And then I had it for the first time ever this past time I went to California earlier this summer. And that thing was just like, it was so good. So good. And I was excited, like I said, about potentially having it again. But then I also thought about like how I had really like hardcore determined I would never ever have this ever again. Um, After this juice feast. And that also like wasn't just me just arbitrarily deciding, but also or just based on like, you know, intellect, but also acknowledging with some, you know, with some acknowledgement that like my taste buds and chemical, you know, build up with change, of course, over the course of such a long, you know, cleansing of the system. But anyways, um, I was thinking, but a lot of it was just like, oh, I'm not gonna, you know, have it again. And I was like, hold up now, like, my spirit and soul, in terms of what I believe, will reincarnate and stuff, but this self named this, you know, once in this lifetime. And I was like, wow, I was really going to deny myself something forever that genuinely gave me joy. And I know this is on case by case basis and stuff like that, but this is where my thought was. And it's not to say that I'm gonna like, I don't know, like I'll get to that, but um and it wasn't just the food in and of itself that I was like, that really touched me. It was also because I, every time I remember that, I'd also remember hanging out with like my brother, and my other brother was studying and stuff, doing his due diligence. But you know, my brother and their friends, and us talking and laughing, and all of that, all of that went into, was part of the memory of that vegetarian lasagna with delicious garlic bread. Um, and you know, it's not like I need a gorge on homemade lasagna. You know, that's what I mean to say. Not at all. You know, but at the very least, like I did want to have that kind of experience, understanding that I can't replicate it exactly as it was again. At least one more time, you know, to have that. And it occurred to me then how my thinking process, what I was going through and wrestling with, as I came off this juice feast, related to something that I'm like playing with and really investigating, but newly learned from a book that I was reading, or I just finished reading at the time. Say that was called. I'm tripping over a lot. It's been a long week. Called The Five Levels of Attachment by Miguel Ruiz Jr. Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. So he's the son of Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements, Fifth Agreement, Mastery of Love. So this is his son. So in his book, he presents several insights into our levels of attachment, or ideas, like from, you know, non-attachment, of course, but to the point of identifying with the ideas, internalizing them, and in a more dangerous sense, becoming fanatical about them. Now, in this book, he utilizes the analogy of a soccer game to delineate the levels of attachment and how they mount up level by level. And as he explores like coming down and stuff like that in the following chapters, he, I don't know, unwittingly, or wittingly, I don't know, uses the analogy of a woman who practices veganism. And although uncannily apt for my personal experience, even if he didn't use it, like, I do have a mentality that can readily see a lot of interrelatedness between concepts and things, and it's not really such a leap for me to be able to apply it to my own personal experience and stuff. But I just thought that was kind of quirky. So some of the things that he said deeply resonated with me, in sitting with myself and the disappointment, yes, that comes to terms, or that I came to terms with, as I really faced the reality of me ending my juice feast way sooner than I had planned. And the first of that is that and yes, I'm looking at my notes, by the way, I didn't say that, but he touches on the difference between pursuing a goal or attaching, for lack of a better word, or to paraphrase, attaching to an idea from a place of unconditional love versus conditional love. And in this vein, he's also talking about unconditional and conditional self-love, right? So essentially, from what point do we embark on a journey of change? is what I then asked myself in learning this. And, this point is going to be something that I continuously refer to and remind myself of as, with what I'm documenting, and what I'm documenting is something that I'm legit trying to do irrespective of whether it's recorded or not. Just on a journey of really shifting a lot of core things to change. I mean, as, I don't know, cliche or something, or existential it may sound, my life. And the journey to bettering it and stuff. So don't be surprised as I bring this up again and again. But and the second thing is how that he brings up is how we are usually fighting to be right, especially when we've internalized our attachment to an idea, or like fused it to our sense of identity, sense of self, and self-worth. So the latter of these, that particular point, it really resonated in a similar way to what an idea that I had like really grabbed this third time that I read the book. Bell Hooks is All About Love. And the observation that so long as we are more attached to having power, there can be no love. And I, for my purposes, will say like translate power into like winning, And so what I thought about is, how this related to my experience is like, coming off the juice feast and coming to some sort of peace with my decision, or that defeat per se, is that I thought of really the struggle for power and how obvious, or like winning, and how obvious it is in our intrapersonal relationships, but how insidious and tragic it can be when we don't notice it in our interpersonal relationships. So to reiterate, like, the struggle or the fight to be right is obvious in our arguments between two people, etc., but can be something we easily miss, yet is also very present in our relationship with ourselves. And he also does mention this in his book, but as I witness with myself and other people, when we're like, we can glom on to things that, or like when we read or hear people speak to us, etc., we have a tendency of just attaching or just remembering the things that can more easily fit into our experience versus the things that we're comfortable with versus the things that challenge us a little bit more. So anyways, he does point it out in his book. That's to say, if you read it, don't miss that. So for instance, with me, I have this vision of myself as healthy, vibrant, all those wonderful things. And, that vision is based on a feeling of unconditional love, and comes from that space. So like, when I'm more in that feels body or whatever, I feel more motivated to go to yoga class, to make healthier eating decisions, etc., etc., And although this vision is also subsequently inspired by, like through a sense of, or a feeling of self-love, of research, reading, watching films, and all on like, vegetarianism, veganism, raw veganism, and even the opposing argument. And even even though I was willing through this sense again of more unconditional love for myself, of willing to incorporate more radical ways of eating and lifestyle changes there into my life, there is a certain point at which this became more conditional. And I can't know what, when, and stuff like that, but at a certain point, I had gotten married to, or married to myself, how I would get to that vision and what that path or journey would or should look like. And the sign for me that was what was taking place is, because whenever, for instance, I would deviate from that, the language towards myself would be very destructive. And I would be whipping myself into guilt over one meal, whipping myself over guilt over one meal into another meal into another meal, because that's how it can go. Like, oh man, shit, I fucked up. What? Well, it's all at a loss now and stuff. And then just eat whatever and gorge on whatever and feel even worse and feel as I do more and feel even worse. But the language would be like some things I'd be like, well, yeah, this isn't where you're supposed to be right now. If you would stop doing this, you could have been, raw vegan since, and like, well, this isn't how you're going to get there. This is leading us further away. Like, this is really bad. Like, but it'll just, and granted, that's like an observation. It's just like, it seems like an objective observation, but like in the tone and the intention behind it, and it was just like, well, this isn't it. And you're not, like, you're failing right now. Like, really, this is, versus talk that's more like constructive and corrective, or even like an investigation as to like, why is it that French fries are my weakness? And even for that word weakness, I rather like use misstep, because if we even think of it as like a misstep, then it's just like, oh, you missed a step, you can really get back into the rhythm of it, and that being something that'll actually be more helpful as you go along the journey, versus like, oh man, you just like weak and like, just beating yourself up. You don't feel like you can get back on, like you said, if you fall off a horse, get back on. But so I would talk that way, and it's very, very conditional, as in like, I can't accept myself until I've reached that point, versus always accepting myself along the way. And so it's so interesting is that when I first discovered raw vegan eating and practices such as juicing and all that stuff, and incorporating smoothies, I was actually organically eating vegetarian at the time. So I used to, like in my teenage years, I would even joke that I was damn near carnivorous, and then when I hit grad school and had to like cook for myself, my own food, it was just more chicken. I was a chicken girl, of course, like if I ate out and if they had a burger, whatever, if they had like, steak with mashed potatoes and gravy, fine, maybe, but it was essentially chicken. And I'd have chicken with rice and veggies of any sort. That's like when I cooked for myself. And then at a certain point, I started just making tilapia and salmon, and, or salmon first and then tilapia. And that I had that with my rice and vegetables. And that's just kind of how I ate. And then I noticed I was just like, at the point that I discovered raw veganism, I actually was eating more eggs and beans with the rice and stuff. And it wasn't until like I reflected, I was like, wait, I've kind of been transitioning organically that way, without all the beating myself up, without all of that and stuff. But I hadn't noticed until I really, in researching, discovered all these labels and exactly what it meant. Because before that, I pretty much knew that there were people who ate chicken, meat, and all that stuff, and people who just didn't, and they were called vegetarianism. There was a time that like I knew of one pescatarian, and I actually kept calling it Presbyterianism. Like that can tell you just how little I really knew of these labels and the lines that demarcated them. And so essentially, as I started researching, when I learned the names for them, and when I came across raw veganism, I was so inspired by it. But then I like really sent into and determined like, oh, this is like the only way to go, and it became very rigid. And now that isn't to say that I completely disagree, right? But just in the way I've applied it and applied the knowledge. The danger came when I was like so fanatical against myself about it, and I didn't realize it. So I was really unwilling to accept myself and my circumstances and pretty much anything and everything about myself and my life that hindered me or wasn't a reflection of that goal, of that vision. And so becoming fanatical, from like in terms of my life, about anything creates the danger of denial and or denial of reality, and or realistically doing your due diligence as you journey along towards that goal. So I'll repeat that. So becoming fanatical about anything creates the danger of denial of reality and or realistically doing your due diligence as you journey along towards that goal. Okay? As That's the way to summarize the way in which I observed it manifested for me. So, now what do I do with that, right? So I take me coming off the juice feast and all that stuff not as a failure, but as a learning process, right? On my way towards a healthier vision of myself, because that vision of myself also includes the mindset and the emotional state of myself at that point that of my life, whatever, and how I approach failures, pitfalls along the way. Like that was also encompassed in that vision of myself, that healthier, whatever that thriving life is. And as I continue to continue on that journey and to take, so, so passionate right now. So, and I will continue on that journey and, go on that and work towards that goal, step by step, enjoying, right? Every right step and misstep along the way. So that's the transformation. And that's, the reorganizing of my mindset as I approach this. And so all the while I keep an eye on that prize, but, and trying to trust, very hard for this chick over here, that I'll get there. And this isn't like, just being all wistfully like, I'll get there eventually. That's not, no, I'm still going to, plan and all that stuff. But and going on the juice feast was absolutely great, because having cleared what I could clear in that time, and with being off of it right now and having incorporated and eating this and eating that, back into my diet, incorporating different foods back into my diet, I'm noticing when I feel different and what that difference is, and how I feel after I eat certain things. So noticing how I don't like to feel after I eat them, and able to pinpoint them. So for example, I hadn't noticed until it came back a couple of days ago, and it's now diminishing, that my phlegm issue had disappeared. Like what I said in terms of cold symptoms had actually disappeared. And now I know that, too much queso equals no bueno. And, or, cheese in any amount, if we're honest. But I'm still going to have that lasagna back in Cali. But I'm and I'm going back in August, but I am also going to take responsibility to mitigate those effects. I'm going to drink a lot more water this time around. I'm also going to be incorporating a lot more fruits and vegetables into my diet while I'm still there. And I'm already doing that now, but especially there, since it's even more affordable in terms of produce than over here. And also, I'm not going to make a regular thing out of eating a bunch of cheese and stuff, and keep that goal in mind as I work step by step to no longer desire it or have it in my overall diet and lifestyle. And like I said, I've already started making some shifts by incorporating vegan cheese, which I don't eat as much because it's really strong flavor that I don't like. At least the brand that I have is just ugh. And I still more than half of what I consume in a day, or up to half, if not more, is raw fruits and vegetables in the form of smoothies. So, just taking that as I used to eat a whole bunch of eggs. Now I actually don't eat eggs and stuff like that. I still have my beans and my rice, and just boom, 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 boom. I still have that in mind. Really, I do. And in heart, etc. And so just moving along. So, what did I learn or gain from my experience on the Juice Feast? The pluses of what I learned is that I learned what it would realistically take for me to go on a Juice Feast for the future, whenever I decide to attempt it again. And I also learned that I really like apple, carrot, and ginger juice. And we'll, incorporate that into my lifestyle whenever and as I can afford it. I also started using my juicer again after it sat dormant for 5 years. I also gained the motivation to fit a lot of incredibly healthy practices and supplements and nutrients that are more organic into my overall lifestyle. And although short compared to how long I wanted it to be, I also gained a deeper connection and resonance with myself as I cleared a lot of emotional and mental clutter around who I am, which is still being like, uncovered, or more than like discovered, but uncovered, yeah. And I've gotten closer to being in like line with what I truly resonate with and am about, you know. And with that, I'd like to touch on my channel overall. This investigation into being right and winning a point against myself, I've taken into even seeing how I've approached everything, and how I approached the way in which I should embark on this journey of documenting on my journey, and if I'm about what I'm about, and how, like I said, I should go about documenting it, and what that looks like, all that stuff. And now I haven't arrived at any surefire answers to solve all this. I'm still ruminating in like the question of it, and taking actions here and there as appropriate. But I've gleaned a lot more truths along the way, and I've already begun making some shifts in my social media presence, and how I approach it. So, I'm so glommed on to like not editing anything, and I was actually ignoring the parts of myself that were not in resonance with that, and my approach on certain cases, not all. So like I don't feel anything about like, the 8 minutes of sound that's still missing from my 1 year long anniversary video, because I did everything I could to try and get that segment back, but I can't, literally, that's lost in the ether and stuff. But there are other things in terms of like even Instagram posts and like video posts that, I was just like still bugs me and stuff. And that's not to say that, I have to succumb to every feeling like that, but it's just that instead of hushing them, just like actually investigate and like honor them. But I'll get into that a little bit later. But so for those of you who've been following my videos from, even Locke and like Locke journey videos and everything that I document, you've noticed that I've taken the health videos down. And that was because honestly, I just didn't feel right with calling what I was doing like a juice feast or a juice feast with this or anything like that. Because the kind of person I am is like, if you're going to do this, then here are like the kind of rules and stuff like that of what that counts as, objectively, or like, in terms of what most are in agreement with, I guess. And that's like a tricky thing to say. But I'm not going to go into that. But anyway, so the whole point was to even document the juice feast. And, I just realized I didn't feel like in resonance with calling what I was doing, like an abbreviated juice feast or something like that. So, of course I feel off about that, like feeling like I'm going back on my word, but, taking down the videos, as, taking down the videos, it feels like going back on my word, because I had like said, like, it's this whole journey and project is about like letting all the imperfections show and putting them on display and stuff. But that is also as so long as the real name of the game of it for me is authenticity, right? And having them up there when it really, really didn't resonate with me is also me not being authentic to myself. Now that self, not the core self, but like is shifting and changing and stuff. So even as I become more comfortable with certain things that I'm not comfortable with now, then boom, like things that may have fallen into the category of embarrassment now, that like in the future they'll probably just end up still staying there, if that makes sense. But So that just, authenticity is the core of it. And so it felt very inauthentic to myself to leave it up there when I'm like, well, how I am and what I'm about is like, if I'm going to be doing a juice feast, I'm going to be doing it according to these parameters. I'm not doing it according to those parameters. This whole thing was even to document that. I'm no longer doing that and documenting it, you know. And also, I've also changed my Instagram handle, and I'll link that below. And not only that, but I'll be making more alterations to my Instagram, as I was forcing myself past a lot of discomforts that actually really never ceased for the whole 2 years that I was like sort of, active on it. And there'll be more changes, I'm sure, as I go along and continue to be more honest with myself, as much as possible, And that again is like where I come back to something what I just mentioned a few minutes ago about like honoring myself. And that is actually what I'm doing. That is part of this journey as well, is that there are others whose philosophies I was working with and incorporating in my life, and even my approach that influenced my approach to even social media and this journey. And though I do agree with a lot of those philosophies and stuff, and yeah, I do agree with them, but I was also really ignoring the parts of myself that weren't in resonance. And, all the parts make up the whole. So if there are parts that aren't jiving with it, like I mentioned earlier in this video, it's not about squashing them down, but then being like, well, this is part of the whole. So what, like, if we take different parts of ourselves, if we if we personify them, it's like, going to this person, it's like, okay, so, you don't seem to be jiving with this. Like, what is that about? And then you find out something more about yourself. Like, oh, I'm not okay with it because of this and that and that. Or I'm just not okay with it right now. Or is, all that. So, another thing that's, in line with this and why this video is coming up, when it is that I was actually like, even though I'd finished, planning it out and like my points that I wanted to touch on, I was holding it back because, again, as I caught myself a couple of days ago, I was getting married to or fanatic about, again, the how and the way in which this journey was going to go, and the exact order I should post my talks and my videos. So this wasn't part of like the order I'd come up with in all the writing I was doing. I was like, okay, so this needs to be first and that needs to be, and it's just like, So see, as or I guess a side effect of me charting this journey and this particular journey and process is that there are going to be, as there have already been, a lot of hiccups along the way as I'm figuring it out. So I'm still navigating the places in which I should like hold back or, know when to hold them. As the song goes, know when. Okay, we're not going to do that. So the difference between those moments that need to be honored and when I just need to like let go and just press record. So it's, a struggle, but I am still here. And true to my Aries nature, I will definitely let y'all know when I'm no longer going to be here and when I am if I decide to stop, I'm not going to just like disappear. But so far, I'm still true to form, figuring myself, whoever, it's out. And another aspect of this honoring myself is honoring my pace, as it stands now, right? Rather than what is an idealized version of what it should be, or my posting schedule would be like or should be like. And I may very well get to that, but I have to like respect and honor that and accept that I'm not there yet. So according to like YouTube standards, I'm like, that's someone else's standard. That's outside standards versus where I am at, because I'm not a show. but a person who's sharing very real stuff, and that's hard for me to do. I haven't done that really a lot in a way that I honor myself in my personal life and thoughtless of publicly in the way that I'm doing it, learning a lot of new skills and around that, so it's like this is where I'm at. And so pretty much this is me, this whole like ending the juice feast and see like it just led to me being in a different place in which I'm no longer going to be in denial about a lot of things in the present moment, and to accept it and not sit in it but acknowledge it. But to acknowledge it, and that's really hard. That is hard for me to do, but we can never get to where we want to go if we don't first acknowledge, so we can actually really start where we're currently at. Never get to where we want to go if we don't acknowledge where we're at. That's the only way we can actually start. We're actually starting from our actual starting point, not an idealized starting point, but our actual starting point. Presently in this moment, yeah. And I feel like that's what acceptance really boils down to. For me, it helps bring me into reality, like a reality check, which I really hate because I'm very visionary, and that's not a bad thing. But as much as I, can envision my gains towards a goal, the real gains happen in reality, and that is a hard pill that I'm swallowing. But if I want to really change, I need to swallow it. I must, but I'm working on it. It's kind of like, like Jawbreaker, like it's just big and stuck, and it's just like a little bit of that medicine that won't really go down so easily, but it's going. So to culminate, if there's anything I'd like to leave you with, I kind of like made up a quote for myself during one of the many dialogues that occurs in my head, and that is, growth and truth are more vital to me than simply being right. Being right is a static stance, and static is not too far from stagnation. Growth may not always feel like it is, as it involves death in a way, but is always a forward momentum. Truth may sure as hell not feel like it, but will always make me light enough as I drop the unnecessary baggage of the lies to continue on that journey of my growth. So I'm going to say that one more time. Growth and truth are more vital to me than simply being right. Being right is a static stance, and static is not too far from stagnation. Growth may not always feel like it, as it involves death, but is always a forward momentum. Truth may sure as hell not feel like it, but will always make me light enough as I drop the unnecessary baggage of the lies to continue on that journey of growth. So, until next time, respect that process, enjoy that journey, respect that process, whichever order I usually say it in, doesn't matter. But enjoy the journey and respect the process. All right. Bye, guys.